For the News and Observer, I'm Dawn Vaughan, Capitol Bureau Chief and host of Under the Dome. You're listening to this episode for the week of September 11th, 2023. I'm here today with my politics team colleagues, Luciana, Perez, Uribe, Guinassi, and Bajpai. Like I was saying, this is if you're listening to this on Monday, it's September 11th, which is hard to believe. It's been 22 years since the September 11th. And of course, there's been lasting effects on our country and the world and New York and the Pentagon and Northern Virginia and everything else too. So those that are having a hard day today, let us know. We should let you know that we haven't forgotten either. So that aside, the other date, September 11th, in local government actually has to do with a budget of from 2019. It was the day that the House successfully overrode Cooper's veto of the budget bill. The Senate never did. They never called the vote. It was a big, long fall of, is the Senate going to override too? But they didn't have the numbers. They didn't have the supermajority. Now they have a supermajority. So that means they passed the budget in June, right? Isn't that what happened? So, yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
That's why we're here in almost mid-September.
Right.
Yeah.
It did not. And we're, of course, recording this a few days before you're listening to it. So things could have changed. But tentatively, knock on wood, not to jinx it, it looks like this week that you're listening is probably, hopefully, finally, when we will actually see the state budget documents out, voted on, debated, all within a big flurry of a few days, which is what they do. So there are a lot of different factors at play of what's in the budget. One of the biggest things that was part of that 2019 big stalemate with Cooper is Medicaid expansion, because at the time, Democrats and Democratic Governor Roy Cooper was, very pro-Medicaid expansion, had been for a long time. Republicans opposed it for a long time. All that's changed over the years. Then the final holdup on it was the House Republicans wanting to agree to it, or wanting to agree with how the Senate wanted to pass it, which included certificate of need reform and everything else. So that all happened. Cooper signed Medicaid expansion into law March 27th of this year, but there's still no Medicaid expansion because all roads lead to and from the budget, and it is tied to passage of the state budget, which has not happened yet. So Medicaid expansion itself and what that means, Luciana, you've been doing a lot of work lately on the actual people this impacts that are, maybe never even set foot in the General Assembly. And tell us about your most recent story. You talked to a woman who doesn't live in the Triangle, I think, right? And what Medicaid expansion, how it's potentially could impact her life once this goes forward.
Yeah, so her name is Deanna, and she lives in Salisbury. And she is kind of following the budget stuff because it's hinging on her getting coverage, or whether that's Medicaid, or she's also applied for disability, and those have been hung up for months as well. So she has multiple myeloma, which is a rare cancer of the blood, and she needs a stem cell transfer. So she needs to get her own stem cells, removed so they can then be transferred over healthier and help her extend her life. So she says that her doctor has told her she has about 3 years to live, 2-3 years. And with a stem cell transfer, that could be extended 10 or more years. So it is a significant time frame. And basically, it's the ideal time for her to get that stem cell transfer right now because her stem cells are relatively healthy despite the chemotherapy. So long story short, she's just been struggling for months to get some sort of coverage to be able to get that transfer. And she still has no idea when that budget may pass, when she will get coverage, and when she'll be able to just take the next steps in her treatment plan. So for a lot of people, the delay, while many people might not have had coverage for years, this delay is still significant because it doesn't allow them to plan for the future or to really take next steps in what they need to do to get their health care.
Did she talk at all about how, everybody knows what those of us in the political world know, and of course anyone that works in healthcare knows exactly what Medicaid expansion is and what that means, but a lot of people don't necessarily know. They might just think it's different versions of healthcare. Was she aware that the state was going to potentially expand Medicaid and that a transplant treatment was, more of a funding option than the charity care at some point because of this? Does she pay attention to the political aspect of government at all? Or
yeah, so she's actually pretty well informed. One, even just getting charity care requires a lot of effort. You have to apply. You have to reapply every 3 months. It's like a whole process. You have to get doctor sign off, etc. So she's aware of that. And then in terms of Medicaid, Medicaid is a federal state health insurance program for low income individuals. And that covers right now in North Carolina 41% for people with children or qualifying situations like disabilities, pregnancy, etc. And then expansion is basically the federal government said states that want to can expand their coverage so that people 138% of the federal poverty level can get coverage. And that is basically anyone making under $20,000, at least for North Carolina levels. And currently 41% is for a family of 3 would be $8,000. So that's what you would need to make under to qualify right now in North Carolina if you have kids. But yeah, she's pretty informed about these things, and she has kind of been her own advocate in getting the care that she needs.
So in August, we wrote about how, DHHS said, basically y'all need to get this budget done by September 1st so we can start, getting Medicaid expansion rolling in October. And that seemed to be what was going to come to pass. The way that Senate Leader Phil Berger and House Speaker Tim Moore talked is that they wanted things to move forward, but no, they're not going to separate it from the budget, which is what DHHS Secretary Kinsley asked for, which Democrats asked for, which
the governor asked for
over and over again, right? And Cooper's gone on these kind of tours of the state where he's pushing for this. And this past week, it's been more the education focus. And before his Medicaid expansion, he did another one with teachers, sort of like still waiting on that budget, Of course, Cooper was part of the delay and a lot of standoffs years past, but this time it's the, a little bit of like the, not wanting to give a political win with Medicaid expansion being separate, but also it does have to do with money, and that's why they wanted to tie it to the budget. So I wrote about this this kind of House versus Senate reason for the delay this past week, and just trying to get a clear way to explain to our News and Observer readers, to if you haven't read the story, to our podcast listeners, about why, if you're all the same political party, can't you just get the budget out? And it's just because you're the same political party doesn't mean you agree how money should be spent and how much raises should be and how much taxes should be and if Medicaid expansion should be tied to it or not and everything else. So anyway, it looks like maybe now this is the, I know,
like you said, knock on wood.
This is the week, and we'll see.
Closer and closer.
Yeah.
So you looked a bit at kind of what was holding it back just recently in an article. So what are some of the big things you think are currently pausing it?
From what I understood, the biggest delay that Berger and Moore and the top budget writers were negotiating was the total tax package. So tax cuts are already happening. It's just the matter of how quickly they're happening. And if the sooner you implement tax cuts, you need to make sure that you're not hurting the state's ability to pay its bills, essentially. So there's surplus money, there's billions in surplus, but that's also one-time money. So in the past, that's been used for things like like bonuses. Sometimes they've just put money in the SCIF, which is my favorite acronym, and legislative acronymity, the State Capital Infrastructure Fund. It's just fun to say. And then there's the Rainy Day Fund, which I can't remember what the real acronym is for that. So savings, and the Senate likes to save money and cut taxes. And the House, much more like open ears than the Senate, has realized that an almost 25% vacancy rate among state employees, issues with teacher base pay, which is set by the legislature, even though they're technically not state employees, bus drivers, which is a statewide national problem. You need to give people money. We've had people on here on the podcast over the months saying that it comes down to the money. Democratic agency leaders, give them the money. Republican agency leaders, give them the money. And that's probably the biggest thing we're waiting for on a numbers. Medicaid expansion is numbers, but of course also policy. And that's one of the big holdups. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to talk more, especially, and Avi's been covering this a lot lately, about casinos and how budget negotiations have taken so long that they figured out the taxes and the raises, and they still haven't done anything yet. So let's talk about casinos and throw that in and make the budget process drag out even longer, because that's what they like to do. So stay tuned. We'll be right back. You're listening to Under the Dome. I'm Capitol Bureau Chief Dawn Vaughan, here with politics reporters Avi Bajpai and Luciana, Perez, Uribe, Guinassi. Before the break, we were talking about the budget and the delay this year, even though it's all Republicans deciding, but it's House versus Senate, which is kind of a perennial issue as long as I've covered the legislature anyway. Because it took so long, something else they started talking about recently is now part of the negotiations and could be part of the dragging it out within a matter of days, I guess. If y'all are listening to this and casinos are not in the budget, then the budget is probably coming out Monday, Tuesday morning. If they are in the budget, it could mean that it's delayed a little bit just because of having to sort out the numbers with the documents.
And it says a lot that there's uncertainty up until like a couple of days before the budget comes out. That's significant.
So what do you, it's funny, this week, Luciana got into ABC committee where they're talking about expanding alcohol laws and then now expanding gambling.
Big week.
So,
Vice's week.
There is a wing of Republicans who are conservative on issues like alcohol and gambling, but apparently not as much as the majority, I guess. I mean, we're seeing some of that, right? Where there's hesitation by some of the casinos, but other Republicans are like, yeah, sure, let's expand different types of gambling.
Yeah, I guess people fall into different camps. I guess you could divide the caucus, House and Senate caucuses into different camps of how strongly people believe, have an opinion on this one way or another. But this is something that has kind of, it's been looming over the budget negotiation process, and it's just sort of been looming over the legislature this whole summer, basically since the end of May, June. You didn't really hear too much about this at the start of the session, and then legislature legalized sports wagering. Governor Cooper signed that into law. And then as soon as...
I was going to say, it was like right around then, right?
Yeah,
like
as soon as that happened, you started to hear murmurs of, first it was video lottery terminals. There's tens of thousands of these video gaming machines, video lottery terminals, fish games, basically all over the state. It's been something that state officials have been trying to crack down on for decades, for 20 plus years. But there's always been a sort of a contingent of lawmakers and lobbyists, obviously, who have argued, people, the demand is there. People are going to seek these forms of gambling, forms of entertainment out. So why not just legalize it, regulate it, get some tax dollars from it?
It's a little bit different, though, where you're sports betting on your phone and, you're doing that without paying taxes versus building a huge casino and everything that brings to a community, though, right?
Yeah, I mean, casinos, that's a whole other ballgame. That's a huge sort of decision by lawmakers to make to allocate money to that, to approve it. Right now, casinos are only on tribal lands in North Carolina. So basically, you have this proposal, sort of hints of a proposal come out over the summer that, the Republicans have an appetite to build up to 4 new casinos in the state. You're talking about, they mentioned entertainment districts, so you're talking about full-fledged, casinos with hotels and other commercial development, retail. So really trying to invest, plug in a lot of money into different rural counties across the state. Obviously, we talked to Leader Berger, Speaker Moore. They have constantly mentioned this concern about Caesars Casino opening across the state line in Danville,
which is where Berger's from, I think.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it's just right above Rockingham County, where he's from. So, you sort of get this pitch from the leadership throughout the summer that, look, we're going to lose out. You're going to have North Carolinians drive an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours to Danville. If that's going to happen, why not just sort of, we should retain that revenue, that tax dollars. It should be invested in our communities. But there is some pretty sizable opposition.
Who are the conservatives that are opposed it?
A lot of it, I think, a fair amount of it sort of comes down to ideological lines. Sort of the further conservative you go, the further right you go. People who are in the Freedom Caucus, some of these lawmakers have openly have been vocal in their opposition. People who are also pastors, for example, they have some strong convictions about, they don't believe that the state should be financing or be involved in this at all.
And if they thought, sports betting on your phone was a problem, they're going to be a lot less likely to say like a whole casino, which it turns out casinos aren't actually like Ocean's 11. Movies lied to me. It's, not exactly that vibe of everybody's happy and Texas. I mean, Ocean's 11's about a robbery, but you know what I mean?
I don't think they want that scenario. But you see significant opposition this past week alone. You have people from Phil Berger's home county, Rockingham County, several people, local residents, come to the legislature, do a press conference in front of the legislature, and just basically say, like, this is, they don't know what to make of this. They're suspicious of it.
That's kind of unusual, right? You usually don't see people from somebody's district coming
not only local residents, but you have Rockingham County Sheriff Sam Page being a vocal sort of opponent of this, coming down to the legislature. Former Congressman Mark Walker, who's running for governor, he's sort of joined this fight as well. So there's a political angle to this too, in terms of political camps. But we're days away potentially from the budget being released, and no one really knows outside of the secret closed door meetings.
Yeah. So much transparency.
No one really knows what's going to happen. And talk about transparency. I mean, it's not every day you see CPAC, the Conservative Political Action Conference, and Donald Trump Jr. Take to Twitter and basically no holds barred say kind of denounce this and say, this looks like shady backroom deals, and where's the transparency? What's going on? Republicans aren't supposed to be doing this kind of stuff.
Don't you think a Republican maybe asked them to do that? Somebody who wants the criticism?
Yeah, maybe we'll find out, I think, in the days to come. But it is interesting that they're getting so close to the finish line. Mm-hmm. And as they get there, the opposition is not sort of just quietly retreating. It's actually growing louder.
I mean, my bingo card for the last thing in the budget was not gambling and casinos, so that's not what... all right, let's move on to our picks for headliner of the week. Luciana, what is your headliner of the week?
So if you happen to have heard some noise in the background of this podcast, it's because the Hopscotch Festival is doing some, practice prior to the show tonight. And we have it right across the street, so maybe I will try to wiggle my way in there later today.
We have a pretty good view from Fayetteville Street of things going on downtown. So, my headliner is about the other end of downtown, about 6 blocks away from the newsroom, the legislative building cafeteria. There's a new drink in the cafeteria this week I noticed in the machine. It's Starry. I only drink diet soda, so I didn't try it because they didn't have Starry Zero. But it's sort of like a Sierra Mist type of thing. But the biggest thing I thought...
So you have tried it then?
I've had like the Diet Starry. Actually, it was a downtown something in the past 6 months downtown when Starry first came on the market, and they were giving samples, and it's fine. It's no, yes, those of you who are in NC Pol are waiting to hear it. It's no Diet Sundrop. So it's fine. It's switching it up. I don't know what it replaced, honestly.
You're making me really want to try it.
So you should. I mean, the cafeteria is bipartisan in soda. One side is Coke products and one side is Pepsi products. So I guess Starry's market infiltration. Someone on Twitter mentioned that, where's Representative Jason Stain, who is a big Sundrop fan, as of course as the governor is too. And I don't think he has control over it. That would be probably a Paul Coble question on soda or the cafeteria.
I'm an Inca
manager.
Cola fan. That one's the one from Peru. That's a soda from Peru.
Oh, okay.
So I'll bring it to the newsroom one day.
Okay, all right.
Yes.
Avi, what's your headliner this week?
I'm just going to keep it simple. For me, it's been a couple of really, really hot weeks. Really humid too. So I'm just refreshing my weather app on my phone and hoping and praying that we get to a couple of cooler weeks and that summer is in the rear view.
Well, we had false fall. Aren't we in second summer now?
Yeah.
Like
But my understanding is that's like a week or 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping,
But we get rain on the weekend, of course.
The budget will become law. The leaves will all fall. It'll be pumpkin festival time.
Yeah.
That'll
be good.
Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah.
I had my first pumpkin coffee today.
Oh, okay.
I'd never tried any before, so.
There you go.
What was the verdict?
It's all right. I'm not a fan yet.
All right. I'm Dawn Vaughan for Avi Bajpai, Luciana Perez, and everyone at the NNO. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you next time.